Vayishlach.
Teves, New Mimer, page Tzadik Aleph, Divrei Maskil Kuf Aleph, Divrei Maskil Vayishlach Yaakov.
So we begin with the pasuk Vayishlach Yaakov Alochim Lefonov El Esov Ochi Akshor Sa'ir is written in the pasuk that this is the beginning of pasuk Vayishlach, where Yaakov Avinu sends angels, and as Rashi tells us it's angels Kipshutei, because the word malach in Lashon Kodesh can sometimes mean, well, that's one of the meanings that an angel has, actually. It can mean a shaliach, a messenger. The truth of the matter is that malachim are anyway shluchim, as it's brought down in many places. So the word malach actually is based on the root concept of a shaliach. So anyway, Yaakov Avinu sent, as Rashi tells us, he sent angels, Lefonov, El Esov, to his brother Esau. Now this was when Yaakov Avinu had completed his 22 years, or his 20 years, stay in Lavan, in the house of Lavan, and he's now coming back, having left Lavan, having been intercepted by Lavan on the way, and he overcame all of those Yonim, and he now is approaching Eretz Yisrael. Now as Rashi brings down at the end of Parsha Vayetze, the previous Parsha, the angels, the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael, came out to meet Yaakov Avinu, and the Malachim from Chutzalot were accompanying him to the border of Chutzalot and Eretz Yisrael. And at that point, Yaakov Avinu sent Malachim. Probably he took from those Malachim that were anyway accompanying him to Esau Ochiv to try and find out where Esau was really holding. And the Kavanah in Pashtus, what we mean here in the Maimah, is that Yaakov Avinu had in mind very high aims with meeting up with his brother Esau, hoping that, like he had been very busy in Ruchnias these whole 20 years in Beis Lavan, and he'd achieved tremendously elevated madrigas in the bureau of Lavan, and in the bureau of the Olam Beklal, and in the what we call El Pisis Hamshochas Avodas Elyonim Ma'id, and therefore B'midah Musuyemas he was already ready for what we call the shleimus of the Olam, which is going to occur B'zman HaGeula. Yaakov Avinu was already ready, Mitzad Avidos, he was already ready for that, his galas. He wanted, he assumed, or at least he hoped that it would be possible to assume that Esau, who also had in himself very high netzutzes to Kedusha, as is well known in reference to the bracha that we saw in last week's part, in the Maimah that we learned just now, that Yitzchak wanted to bless Esau, due to the fact that Esau had in himself also very high inyonim, high netzutzes of Olam HaToihu, but they were hidden in him. B'derech Elam Gadol, as we saw, the whole Arichas Beneged to Esau, and therefore Yaakov was of the hope that if he could meet Esau and they could sort of get together, unite in certain very elevated madrigas in Ruchnias and in Elikus, Hamshachas Kile Elikus, that they could bring the shleimus of the world into Golu, which is what we would call, what we're hoping for, take it from Yad in the Gula Shleima. That's the purpose why he sent these Malachim, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. He was trying to keep away from Esau. Why would he all of a sudden deliberately, what you might call, make advances toward Esau? We have to say that that was his kavanah. Now we'll soon see that that comes up also in some of the Inyanim that we bring down B'Shem Pirush Rashi. Ve'itzav Osom leimoya, and he said to them to say like this, that he commanded them that they must say when they met Esau, Koi Seimrun Ladini La Esau this is what you should say to my master Esau when you meet him. Im Lovon Garti, you should tell him that I sent to say to him that I have lived with Lovon. Vo'eichar ad oto, but I have been late with you, I've been delayed. That's from the word mucha, which mucha means late. Vo'eicho ad ato, I've been held up until now. And it's quite a hold up. It was, as we said, it was a period of 20 years. Vayhi li shoyer v'chamer v'tzein v'eved v'shifra is the completion of the pasuk. And there has come to me, vayhi li, it's come to my possession, shoyer v'chamer, oxen and donkeys and flocks of sheep, tzein. And then he goes on to say that he has also many slaves, eved v'shifcha, v'eshlecha lahogid ladini, and I'm sending now a mission, as it were, eshlecha, I'm sending a mission, lahogid ladini, to tell you all about this, limtzei chen b'yei, never to find grace in your eyes. That's what he told the Malachim that they should say when they first meet Esau. So that was the opening, those are the opening psukim of Parsha Vayishlach. And we have to say that there's hidden in this whole sentence and the details of the sentence, the whole shlichus of the Malachim to Esau as they're being sent by the Mishalech, who is Yaakov. Therefore, we need to understand what are the details in this pasuk that indicate to us all the pnimius of the kavanah and the purpose that Yaakov Avinu had in sending the shlichus to Esau. V'tzodik lahovin, this is now we begin that inquiry. V'tzodik lahovin, asher modia loi im lovan garti. What was the purpose of him telling Esau that I have dwelt with Lavan? He doesn't say how long, but he says I have dwelt with Lavan. Esau yoda shehoya etzel Lavan. I mean, that's not anything new to Esau, because everybody in Yaakov Avinu's in Yitzchak family, everybody knew that Yaakov fled to Padan Aram, is the name of the place is, and that he met up there with his relative of the family, Lavan, and he stayed there in his household for Sachakot, as we said, 20 years. And right at the very beginning of the previous parsha, Rashi brings a story how Esau sent his son Elipaz to chase after Yaakov and catch up with him and try and kill him, because of the hatred that he had been stirred up in his heart against Yaakov through the taking of the brachas and other inyonim. And Elipaz caught up with Yaakov, and there's a whole story over there in Rashi how Yaakov persuaded him to let him stay alive and to let him go ahead where he was going. So already from that early point, the son of Esau knew where Yaakov was headed for, and he knew where he was going. But the fact that Yaakov had been all these years by Lavan, well, that's not anything new, and that doesn't seem to add anything or in any way have an essential part in the whole shlichus to Esau. And so they said, what was the point of that, since anyway Esau knew that he'd been staying by Lavan. And what does that really matter to the whole shlichus? The fact that he was by Lavan. What's it important in this whole context? He said, even more to be not understood is Masha Omar Vahili Sher V'cha. He tells Esau that he's been blessed, or he's been, had a good grace with a whole lot of what you might call the good things of Elam Ha. He's got shur, which means flocks of cattle, and he's got chamirim, and he's got slaves and that do all his work for him, but they're going to Arichas Ha'inyan is why does he have to tell all of that to Esau? What does that add to his whole messengership to Esau? V'halo yoda she'Esau seinaloi. Yaakov Avinu knew that Esau hated him, and that was the whole anxiety that Yaakov Avinu felt about this whole meeting. And we see another pesukim at the beginning of the parasha where Yaakov Avinu expresses his worry and he asks for brachas from the Rabbeinu Shalom that he should protect him from the hatred of his brother. So since he knows that anyway Esau hates him, then why did he go almost what it looks like, as adequate blowing his trumpet to Esau, telling him that he's got all these good things in Olam Hazeh? That's not the sort of thing you tell somebody that he doesn't favor you, because it only arouses in him an angry envy of what you got. So therefore, why did he tell him? He should have hid his benefit. All of the benefits of Olam Hazeh that he'd gained, he should have hid it from him altogether. Why does he have to inform him and to tell him with a special messengership that he's got Sher V'cha? Sher V'chamoya. Well, it's so tempting to say what the Medrash says about that, even though the Rebbe doesn't bring it. But due to the unbelievable situation in which you didn't find themselves, then anything which can be more a tikva, and a further tikva, and a new Yisrael to the Indian from Bias HaMoshiach, as the Medrash Rabbah says immediately on that posik, Va'ili Sher V'chameya, that Sher Zeh Moshiach ben Yosef, Shenema B'choyer Sher Hodor Hoya Loya. It's in this week's parsha that Yosef is called a B'choyer Sher. So the Sher represents Moshiach ben Yosef, V'chameya represents Moshiach ben David. Shenema Oni V'roichaval Chameya, that Moshiach will be literally a poor man riding on a donkey, as they state in Novi, in Yeshaya Novi. The two inyanim of Sher v'Chamoya indicate the two madrigas in Moshiach. Moshiach ben Yosef and Moshiach ben David. In other words, Yaakov Avinu told Esau, the Fizeh, that he was already holding by the inyan from Moshiach, and by he's already got it in his pocket. He already has the two inyanim in the inyan from Gila HaMoshiach, and he was waiting just to see that Esau would say, "Oh yes, I'm also working exactly the same direction. Isn't that amazing?" And unfortunately, that wasn't the case for Esau's man. At that particular moment, it wasn't the case. But the Rebbe says on many occasions that nowadays it is, and that if you say to Esau, "Va'ili Sher v'Chamoya," and you talk openly about Moshiach, even to the grober cop of Esau, that he will buy it, and he'll say, "Oh, this is Givaldik, let's get moving and make the world into the world of Moshiach." Of unfortunately, Rachmani Nitzlan, to our terrible sorrow and to our great tragedy for Yidden, for the whole world, Yidden have said exactly the opposite to him. They said, "We don't have Sher v'Chamoya, which is Moshiach, we have a state. We have an army, and aren't we great?" And so Esau says, "Well, that's what you got. I got much more. And you just be a good boy and listen to me." And he didn't say, "Oh, yes, of course, that's what we have to do." And so we're now holding by the fact that they're giving away the whole Medina that they got. I know they used to let them have the Medina, and now they're giving it back. And there's even news today which indicates that they are systematically giving it all away, even before the agreements with the Annapolis and the whole thing, but secretly and behind everybody's back, they're already giving back whole parts of the country, allowing Arabs to creep in over the borders and all sorts of amazing things which are happening. So it means that they're already dismantling their own Medina. And Mamela, that's what it's written here, way back, thousands of years ago. Yaakov Avinu said, "Va'ili Sher v'Chamoya." The whole Inyan for Yidden is only Moshiach. There's nothing else. Yidden came into the world to make the world another world, not the world you understand it as. So Esau, at this particular moment, he wasn't buying it, unfortunately. But now he would be if we only told him the truth. V'hinei Rashi Pirush, so Rashi says, on that pasuk, Rashi Pirush, Im Lavan Ga'ati, I lived and I literally stayed with Lavan. Rashi says, V'tariyag mitzvahs shomarti, that even though I was living by Azar Rosha and Azar Drekop, like the singing of this guy Lavan, nonetheless, he said, I kept all the 613 commandments. Now, if you look carefully in Rashi, you see that that's really the second Pirush in Rashi on that passage. So the first Pirush in Rashi over there tends to bear out what the Rebbe just said, that he tended to play things down a little bit like Avi Esau. And he said, I lived with Lavan, but I only lived like a garti. I mean, someone that just, just lives around there, but he's not really a fully fledged toshav. He's not a real dweller. He just sort of, he's around there. So he said, you shouldn't worry, that I haven't become a big leader like the prophets that my father said that I was going to be the big balabas. I've just been a little, dweller, and I've just been hanging around this guy Lavan, so you don't need to worry. That's the first pshat. The second pshat is, he said Rashi, is that the word garti is the same oisius as taryag. That's what Rashi said. He said that the word garti makes the same letters as the number taryag, and that is the number of the mitzvahs. So why would Yaakov mention that? That he was sinning, and he was saying to Esau that he kept, despite the fact that he lived with a person like Lavan, he kept all the taryag mitzvahs, shomarti taryag mitzvahs, and Rashi finishes off with the expression, v'lo lamadati mimasov haroim. In other words, I did my things, but I didn't learn from his actions. Auch upon him, the Rebbe says, v'gam ze eina muvan. That's also not understood. Halo yoda es Esau, she'eina miyake inyan kiyum hamitzvahs. Yaakov knew who Esau was, and he knew that Esau wasn't particularly, the value, didn't hold in any value the union of keeping mitzvahs. Miyaker means to hold it dear or full of value. He knew that Esau didn't hold any value in keeping the mitzvahs. As ma'modir lo yeshashoma taryag mitzvah. What does it mean? What was the purpose of him telling in this very significant messengership to Esau that he kept all the taryag mitzvah? I mean, that's apart from the simple question that occurs to the intelligent and the attentive reader. What does it mean he kept taryag mitzvah? I mean, there's a lot of mitzvahs that Yaakov couldn't have possibly kept, because a lot of them are totally in Yetzias Mitzrayim. And Yetzias Mitzrayim hadn't even been yet. Like mitzvahs tefillin, for example, noch hundreds in Yonim, in the Torah and in the keeping of the mitzvahs. So what does he mean that I kept all the taryag, all the 613 mitzvahs? So therefore we have to say that the diuk of the Lashon is that not that kiyamti of a shomati. In other words, I guarded and I was careful to look after. But to actually keep a mitzvah is not called lishmor, but it's called likayem, to do the mitzvah and keep it, b'puyal. So therefore we have to say that Yaakov, and the always, there was a lot of mitzvahs that they didn't actually keep, mamish, b'puyal mamish. Because we see that Yaakov, married two sisters. That's a loisase, it's a mitzvah loisase al Torah. In the Torah, how it was given Sinai, at Sinai. I said, therefore, we have to say that he didn't mamish keep all the mitzvahs, because we see that he married two sisters. And interestingly enough is, that's brought down in the Rishonim, that also Bilhah and Zilpah, they were also sisters, even though they were shvachis, but they were also sisters. That's how you bring it. So come today is that Yaakov married two sets of sisters. So we can't really say that he kept the Torah b'kiyum b'poel mamish. But nonetheless, Rashi says that he guarded all the 613 mitzvahs. So we have to say that the obvious be'ikar they had an avodah ruchnias, very, very high and very elevated avodah ruchnias, where they guarded all the inyanim how they were in ruchnias, the inyan ha-mitzvah. And yet, nonetheless, midei pam, lapam, they did certain things. The gashmiya, so Elam, which is me'ain and dugma for that particular mitzvah. But therefore, everybody should have put up his hand and said, well, he did keep tefillin, Yaakov, but he didn't put on tefillin. He had the inyan of the maklis. They had to go with the sticks with the whole riches. It's brought down in the Zohar Kodesh that when he used those maklis with the tzon loven, that he was mechaven the same kavanas that we are mechaven, hopefully, at least mechaven some of them, he was mechaven the same kavanas of what we do when we put on tefillin. In other words, that was Yaakov Avinu's way of keeping tefillin, so that was already a pa'ula in the physical world, in the gashmistic world. He actually made sticks, and with that he was mechaven the inyan from tefillin. But if you were to find those sticks, you wouldn't be mechuyev to put them in shemas. If there's some way that you could find those sticks, you wouldn't be mechuyev to put them in shemas. Because the mitzvahs that were done by the Ovis were only a remez to inyanim and ruchnim. They weren't actually hamshochas elakus into the geshem. When you put on tefillin, then the tefillin have a kedusha atzmiyas, apart from the fact that you put them on. And therefore the parshias and the tefillin, what they're going to do is, they have kedusha in themselves, apart from the fact that you put them on.
What did Ovis achieve by having this sort of kavana?
Well, what did he achieve by having, what did Yaakov achieve by having the kavana? So with that, that's what we're trying to say. He didn't actually do the mitzvah the way we do it, but he was mechaber, or the yanim l'mayla that we do alidei kiyum mitzvahs tefillin. You should ask the other way around. What did he need the sticks for? That was loy kukach moving. That's not so mavua. But we have to say that there were certain inyanim, which are very great inyanim, that they always already began the road towards Matan Torah, that they were maramas and they were mamshik, at least to a certain extent, those inyanim how they are in the Olam HaGashmi. And the first mitzvah, which was mamish that way, was the inamilah. And that Avraham Avinu did get, and he did get it the way it is kept even after Sinai. In other words, the actual milah of the oral of the pashtas. That was brought down in the Siddur, that was like the beginning with Avraham Avinu for all the hamshachas that were going to occur at Sinai. That he was like the opener of the whole Ina, but he was only an opener. So therefore, it's not understood, why did he tell Esau that he kept all of the mitzvahs? When I say kept, he was shomer, he guarded, and he was involved in the ruchnias, at least, of all the Tariag mitzvahs. Mi'acha was Esau doesn't bother about the inyan mitzvahs. It's l'chera not a inyan which would cause Esau any particular, how would you call it, favoritism towards Yaakov, one way or the other. V'gam tzadik lahavin, also we need to understand, Masha Omar va'eicho ad ator, that I was delayed until now. I got late until now. Mipnei mahoy tzadik mahir lovei sho'ema va'eicho. Why did he have to be in a hurry? That he says that I've been delayed. In other words, if you say to someone, look, I've been delayed, then that implies you should have been here a lot earlier. But you say, look, I'm sorry, I've been held up. I've been delayed. So if Yaakov said to Esau, look, I've been delayed, I should have really met you a lot earlier, but I've been delayed until now, well, that implies that he should have really been there earlier, and he was delayed. He said, that's not, it's not moving. Why did he have to be in a hurry? Who said that he had to be there earlier, that he says that I've been held up? He also doesn't give any reason or any causatory effect in the world why he was late. He just said, I've been delayed, but he doesn't say what delayed me or why I'm late. So that's also not to be understood. Why is that important in this message that he tells Esau? So we see that we almost covered all the details in what he told the Malachim to tell Esau, himself, and the Sikum Akloli is that we don't seem to figure, anything in simple terms, how these Inyanim were like a messengership to Esav. What was the purpose and what was the Nakuda of all these Pratim? Some of them seem to be unnecessary, some of them seem to be something that anyway Esav wouldn't appreciate, and thirdly is they don't seem to come from anywhere who said you were in a hurry. So the only thing we could maybe suggest that why he was in a hurry is that we know that Yaakov Avinu was held responsible for the fact that he stayed so many years by Lavan, that he wasn't Makayim the mitzvah from Kibbud Av Legabi Yitzchak. That's it's brought down. But again, to Rashi brought it down in the previous Sedras. Rashi mentioned that that's why Yaakov Avinu in Pasuk Vayeshev, or Pasuk Mikate, that's why Yaakov had to put up with so many years of suffering, not knowing what had happened to Yosef, because he missed out on Kibbud Av Aim, that amount of time when he was over in the house of Lavan. So he didn't really have all that much. It doesn't appear that he had all that much choice, and yet nonetheless we see that that's another dogma of how the Chumash, even prior to Matan Torah, held the whole inyan of Kibbud Av to be a tremendously significant inyan. Although we brought it down in some of the Shurim Klolim, we went into that on a couple of occasions, but I've already decided I can't be bold enough to assume that anybody remembers from one class to another what we deal with. But anyway, whatever, just for the sake of it, we did talk about that in 2 Shurim Klolim. Anyway, however, we can maybe say that that's why Yaakov was in a hurry. He knew that he had to get back for the sake of Kibbud Av. If that was the case, then he should have said, that I've been delayed, from my Kibbud Av. He should have made some remez to the whole inner. He just, I've been delayed. Well, that doesn't really seem to say anything of any purport, because he doesn't say why he's upset about the fact that he's delayed. All right, so those are the questions. Now we go to, as usual here in these Maimorim, that we refer back briefly to what was in the previous Maimor. So you can say, well, that's not playing fair, we didn't learn the previous Maimor. So here you'll have to just put your thinking caps on, and we'll have to deal briefly with what was written in the previous Maimor. Well, all the thing calls there, Shodik lahaftim, mashen is buah li'il, the klolos gilui hatainu, de liosid, ובחינת עונג הפשוט שאינו בו במורכב בשום דבר, גם לא בבחינת ריאה דחוכמה, אלא שבעונג הפשוט גופה יש בייס מדרגות. בחינת עונג הפשוט הבו במורכב בטעמי התורה, ובחינת שעשועים העצמי ממש, שאינו בו במורגש כלל, אפילו בטעמי התורה. So, in the previous Maimor, it spoke about the Giluim, which are going to be when Moshiach comes, the Giluim Deli Otzi. And then this Maimor also going to continue. So that's a very good thing and a very healthy thing at this particular point, because maybe it will stir somebody to be a little bit more enthused. To cry out Ad Mosai and to Shrei Yechia Melech HaMashiach. But anyway, the Maimor spoke about what's going to be the Gilui Liosid Lo. Even though that expression, it doesn't mean Liosid Lo, sometime. It means Liosid Lo, but it's coming right now. Anyway, the Rebbe says over there that the main inyan which is going to change and reveal itself is that in the world, Hilamata, is going to be revealed the divine oineg, Hashem's, his pleasure. How do you translate the word oineg? It's very difficult to translate. When you say pleasure, it sounds very sort of plushet and begushim of it. The word pleasure in English doesn't quite carry the edelkeit of the word oineg. But, you've heard when you were young, you heard of the oineg Shabbos. You probably heard that expression. So a person pictures Shabbos, and then he pictures the way he feels on Shabbos, and that's called oineg. In other words, a high spiritual elevation, that going up of the soul more towards the essence of the soul, and that's a form of deep fulfillment. Maybe we can put it that way, a deep spiritual fulfillment, and that's connected dafka with Shabbos, because Shabbos is kaviyohu, how the Eibishter, as it were, also at the completion of all of his malach and all of his making of the world, he also felt a certain kaviyohu, as is possible to say. The Eibishter allowed himself, we can put it that way, to experience a certain fulfillment called oineg. But in that gufa, which we're going to see in a minute, there are two levels, but that we'll see in a second. So, as you might say, well, that happens every Shabbos. Why do you say it's only going to happen liyosid? Why is it going to happen liyosid love? Every Shabbos, the Eibishter Kilo finishes the whole creation all over again, and then he has this experience, kaviyahu. He allows the thing to be revealed within himself, what we call oineg, and that occurs every Shabbos. So the answer is henochanami, and on every Shabbos, then it's only a trace and a taste of Moshiach. But that's what we say. Well, we don't say it, but I mean, it is written in the Zemiros, how they call it, the songs that certain people sing on Shabbos. And in Lubavitch, they didn't used to sing these songs Golui. I don't know, maybe some people did. And it appears maybe on certain occasions even the Rebbeim sang some of them. But it's not the minig in Lubavitch to sing them. It's written in one of those songs that B'yoim, how they call it, Me'ayin Olam Habo Yoim Shabbos Manucha. That just like the Indian of Olam Habo is the resting on Shabbos. Yoim Shabbos Manucha. And so Me'ayin is well known. The word Me'ayin means it partakes of, not just similar. The word Me'ayin means that it partakes of that particular Indian within itself, which means that on Shabbos you actually experience a ma'ain of what's going to be the le'osid love, the Indian when there will be the gula shleima taken from Yad Mamish, and the type of oineg that you experience on Shabbos is a little bit al chapanim, or it's at least somewhat of the type of oineg that there will be when Mashiach will be there. And so why is it that we have oineg on Shabbos? We have oineg on Shabbos because the Eibishter has oineg. In other words, that everything comes, bedugma v'yasiz l'mayla in elakus. Because the Eibishter has oineg, and therefore he gives literally, that we should be able to have also the Indian of oineg. And therefore it's written in the Navi, where it's the Indian of oineg on Shabbos is revealed to us through the Navi, and the Alter Rebbe brings it to Shulchan Aruch at the beginning of Hilchos Shabbos. It's written v'koroso la Shabbos oineg, that you must call to the day of Shabbos the Indian of oineg. And so Chassidus says that the word koroso is lashon hamshocha, to call down, bring down. If you bring down the oineg, Eloki, into your world and your individual and your family or your private world or whatever it may be, or the kutza or the whoever it is in the shul or the chutz, you call down the oineg of Shabbos. So what it means, you call down, because in Emerson, the oineg of Shabbos is really what the Eibishter Kaviyochel revealed within himself, and then he gives that to us, in the form of a matana toiva, as is well known in the Lashon of the Gemara, Masechta Beita, that the union of Shabbos is like a great gift what the Eibishter gave to the Jewish people. In other words, that he gives it in the form of a matana, and a matana is something that you have and you give to other person, that he should be able to also experience and have the type of tainug that you have in that Indian. That's what an emes matana is. And therefore, on Shabbos, Kaviyochel, the Eibishter has oineg. And what does he have oineg? Because, as we say, Vayechulu Hashemayim v'ho Oretz v'chol tzva'on. We say that on Shabbos, the whole heavens, everything was completed, and it went upwards in the form of kiloyin. Vayechulu is also from Russian chlois, which means to go out and to expire almost, to go upwards in a state of elevation, and that elevation is called tainug. When we see when a person's in a deep experience of tainug, he sort of goes upwards, he goes out of himself, and he can even forget what is going on around him, etc., etc. That's one of the inyanim. When you're learning Torah, that's the way you're supposed to be. You're supposed to forget everything that's going on around you. And hopefully that really is the case. Particularly people learning in Talmud Tamim and learning in the yeshiva, they don't have what to do with themselves except learn Torah. Do that. Very good. Is a melafise, and the oineg is this gift that Hashem gives us, that we experience kaviyachol, his oineg and his aliyah into himself that occurred at the completion of the pri. In other words, that kaviyachol, the Eibishter had this unbelievable satisfaction, or nachas, as you might call it, nachas ruach. We'll see more about that as we go along. At the completion of the whole creation, and that caused in himself a going upwards and a retreat into the etzem of Elikus, the Eibishter himself. All the things that he put out in detail into the creation, he withdrew it all back into himself. Like when you finish doing a work, you put a lot of effort into it, and then you sit back and say, oh, isn't this is just really what I meant it to be, and you feel this tremendous fulfillment. This all the koiches that you put out into that particular malacha or that particular inyan, everything draws back into you, and then you feel this tremendous fulfillment, both from what you did, but as a way of the feedback that you gain from the completion of the thing. And therefore we see that dafki when a thing is completed, al tzad is toiv, but that's when the ikar of that experience occurs. So kaviyachol, by the Eibishter, it also happened that when he finished the whole bria, then it went back to this return of all the divine powers into himself in an aliyah, into the very essence of Hashem, and that aliyah and that withdrawal of all the inyanim into Hashem's essence, and as it were, the nachas ruach that he has together with that, or as a part of that, well, that's called oinek. That's called Hashem's pleasure, kaviyachol, and he grants us that pleasure on Shabbos. Upon him, those who really make a bit of an effort to experience Shabbos, and that's what you gain from the divine matana on Shabbos. So you better, it's really kedai to chaparayim while you're in Tom Chachmim, because then you can experience that Indian without it being mixed up in too many other balbatish zachen. Well, later on in life, it gets all involved in what you might call balbatish cheshpeinas. But when you're in the shiva, you can experience it just the time of ruchnias and of being, Shabbostik in a very elevated way. And you don't need all the pitchkivkes. You don't need all the little spitzelach and all the inyanim and all the zachen, but you're in the yeshiva and you're experiencing Shabbos. So that's the inyan of oineg on Shabbos. However, that oineg, what the Eibishter has on Shabbos, well, that's an oineg, what you might call in a certain detail, kaviyachol, detail, that he has at completing the whole creation. Oh, but let's move on to every simple observer that when the Eibishter created the creation, he didn't just create a world that he could just for the sake of it. He created the world and all the other millions of worlds that he created in order to get to this world. The Eibishter had a purpose, and there was a whole ultimate, what we call aim and kavana and tachlis in the whole reason why the Eibishter created all the worlds. So just like he has a detailed oineg on Shabbos that he completed the whole bria, well, that's only the beginning. That's just the making of a kli bilvad. What al yedei zeh, there's going to be a whole history of that world, and it's going to lead to what is the purpose that he had in the whole creation, and there's going to come a moment when that whole purpose is realized. In other words, that the whole of the world, everything it involved, is all going to become completed, and then there's going to be this unbelievable expression of oinig on the part of the Eibishter, and then it's going to be Shabbos u'menucha l'chayei lamim. Take it from Yad Mammon. Then it's going to be forever. How do they say in the old English expression, forever and ever. It's going to be oinig, because it'll be the time that the Eibishter is experiencing in the completion of the whole purpose of the ganze Inyan called the Bria, and everything connected with it, and all the Inyanim, Mia, Ha'ilum, Ha'Saki, Elyonim, Be'ika, Ad Lamata, Mata, Ve'ilum, Ha'zeh, Hagashmi, Davki, it's going to be created. Therefore, the Yosid, the Oinig and the Tainug, which is going to be then revealed within Hashem. Now we have to point out, it's not really to be dealt with too much by reasons, we don't get too much off the track. It has to be pointed out that the Inyan of the Eibishter doesn't need Oinig. You can't say that if the Eibishter wouldn't have Oinig, then he'd be lacking. Chas v'sholem to say anything like that. Well, the Eibishter allows within himself this whole Inyan of Oinig. Because ultimately speaking, what he wants to do is give that to the Nivroim. Like we say, he wants to give everything in the form of a gift. So therefore he allows that to occur within him, not really that he has to have oinig, or that he really needs oinig, chas v'sholem, or in any way that oinig perfects his being, or adds to his being, or in some way, modifies his being, or anything of that nature, chas v'sholem, to say davar kazeh. But this whole unbelievable picture of oineg is a deliberate thing that the Eibishter allows to occur within him, because he wants ultimately that the Nivroim should be able to take part, gain that unbelievable Inyan within himself, which he calls Oinig. Alright, so that's what the Rebbe says here. That's what he now tells us, that the Yosid is going to be Oinig Aposhut, She'ena bo v'murcha b'shum davar, gam loy b'chinas riya d'chachma. Ela, he says that in this Inyan of Oinig Aposhut Gufa, there are two madrigas. So in order to understand that, we have to point out that in this whole concept of Oinig, Siddur teaches us in many places that there are levels, what's called madrigas, and oifani in that Inyan of the Oinig. There's what is called Oinig HaMurkav and Oinig HaPoshut. Now the word Murkav, it means compiled together with. It's combined together with. For example, you can say that the makeup, the different chemical inyanim or things of matter, or molecules, all these inyanim, all get together and they form matter. That's called the harkava, the harkova. In other words, the whole together, and they get together all the different factors that make a certain thing. When you discuss their being identified as individual things, then that's called to touch on the harkava of the inyan. Therefore, you can have in simple Hebrew, you take these little things that kids play with, they've got to put it all together. That's called laharkiv, to put together the auto, whatever it is, Christian was. And to take it all apart can be called lifarek, to dismantle the whole thing. Laharkiv means to put it all back. In other words, the word murkav means something is compiled and linked with another inyan, and that makes them both together one entity. And that's called murkav. Tainug murkav. The tainug murkav means that the tainug, the experience of this nachas ruach, this pleasure, is linked and it expresses itself when it is caused almost literally or brought to its gilui through something else. And that's how Oinig works b'derech klal. That I have Oinig, somebody loves Sfarim, he sees a Sefer, then he has Oinig. The Sefer causes him that he gains Oinig from the Sefer. Or somebody loves music, there's this unbelievable, in the previous Maimon the Rebbe spoke about the Inyan of Shir, there's going to be song, Liyosit Love. But in song Gufa, there's going to be like two levels, or two or three different levels in song. In other words, you can have song which is linked together with certain things like music and words and things of that nature. And then eventually you can have a song which is a soundless song. It's not really heard, but it's like the Etzem HaNefesh expressing its tremendous, its reaction for certain inyonim on a very high level, and that's called shir. It's called song, but it's called shir poshut. It means like going out. Now we're going to see in Tainug the same idea. So there's Tainug how you derive Tainug from certain things, and that causes in you this awakening to a very high power called pleasure or nachas. However, we see that it occurs by a mensch that when he's gained Tainug from certain inyonim, that sometimes he can then move from that Tainug that was brought about by these inyonim which added to his Tainug. They're like compiled factors that awoke and caused the Tainug in him. And then he goes back into a higher state where he goes higher than that Tainug, and he just becomes tremendously fulfilled within himself without there being any necessity to be any entity which caused that. But it's just like a state of unconditional fulfillment where he's just absolutely pleased, but he's pleased within the self without really knowing what is that pleasure, what actually caused it. Now that's what we call Tainug HaPoshut. That's called simple Tainug. And that is in certain points of Shabbos, we say that a person, if he really keeps Shabbos the right way, he can be zeicher to that inyan, and therefore that's one of the reasons it's brought down why in Lubavitch people didn't eat at Shabbos Suda Shlishi yet, even the Alter Rebbe says clearly that you should eat. That state in Shulchan Aruch, even in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, it's much that you should eat certain things on the Suda Shlishi yet. But the minhag in Lubavitch is not to eat the Suda Shlishi yet. Or Al Kaponim, maybe it is to be toyim something. In the famous Sikha that the Rebbe spoke about that, he did leave that part of it at least, because the Rebbe Rashab brings it put down in Ayom Yom, but the Rebbe Rashab says it's not our meaning to eat at Suda Shlishi, but you should be toyim something. Some little Indian should be toyim. So the Rebbe in that famous Sikha, the Rebbe talks about that meaning. The Rebbe said that means that you have to be toyim. Some little Indian. Because you have to remind the world that the Iker Liyosid, when all these things are going to be revealed, is the Guf. The Tafki the Guf is going to be the Iker. And therefore, Suda Shlishi is a Zamadrege, where this type of Tainug Kaviochel expresses itself, the way you go out from all the inyonim which you've expressed on Shabbos, the inyan from Oineg. So on Friday we say that the Oineg of Friday night is from the completion of all the things that have been done the whole week, and as it were going back from all that you've done and all that has been achieved, and you go back into the Tainug from having completed all of your actions. Therefore the Medrash says that when you come into Shabbos, you should think and feel as if all your malachas have been completed. Now that's a very important point, because you've got to see that what you've achieved for that week has been perfected. That's what you're supposed to do. That you've done everything you could, etc., etc. But if you just laid back and lit up a cigarette the whole week, then you can't very well say that you did everything you were expected to do, even of what you expected of yourself. Anyway, whatever. What happens on Friday night? You experience a Tainug which is like the completion of things, and therefore those things cause you that Tainug, even though the Tainug is going up into high madrega. The second day, on the second Suda is the Suda by day, there you feel Tainug from the Etzem Ruchnius and the tremendous elevations which are occurring on Shabbos. Therefore you feel a Tainug for much higher things, but there's certain things which are causing you that aliyah into a higher madrega. Suda Shlishi is, you don't know of anything. Suda Shlishi, you just feel Tainug, stop. In other words, that you are so high and so elevated that you're just really not supposed to know where you really are. The B'rega of the Suda Shlishi is. In other words, then that's what's called the Etzem Tainug HaPashut, that's like Kaviochel, the Eibush withdraws into himself in such a way that he's not, the Tainug is no longer from the inyan of the Brio, or even from all the completion of the Brio, or even from the high inyanim which he revealed on Shabbos. Kaviochel, he goes back into that state of retreat into the Atzmas, but in a way that he still takes into account that there is a world, even though it's not any longer what is really causing him that oineg, but whatever he said, he takes into account the world. He wants the world to get what he is, Kaviochel, as it were, at that point, allowing it to be revealed within himself. And that's called the Tainuga Apashut. It means a Tainug which is purely mitzad Tainug. It's like what you might say, to use an expression, it's Tainug for its own sake. Not because of anything which literally brought it about. Now, Liosif, when Moshiach will come, well, that's the type of Tainug that's going to be revealed. And therefore the whole world is going to be in a state of everything is going to be, even going out to the Eibishter with absolute devakas and tainu, almost as you might say, for no reason, without any Indian involved, no, just because the Eibishter and Yidden, and for that matter, even the rest of the world, are all going to be just dovuk and cloven and makusha, be'etzem, 1, 2D, 1, 2D, 2D, and for that matter, even the Umas Ha'olam, and for that matter, even the Chayutz HaSodeh, they call the animals and the birds, and for that matter, I feel that the Daimim are on the contrary. The rocks and the dust, they will be cloven to the Eibush, maybe in a higher madrega than other things. Come over in the famous Indian of Har HaZeisim, that's going to play a big role. The Mount of Olives, what they're going to do is they also in the Indian Hagiula. So what's a mountain? What's that so important? Because a mountain is the Daimim. Anyway, that's going to be Liosif. So every Shabbos, there's a certain giving of what's going to be Liosif, and Be'ikah, that Indian is given in Shalos, in Suda Shlish. But what did I be saying? That in that Oinig itself, there are like two aspects to it, two levels. That's what we're saying. But there's one level where that Tainug HaPashut still in some way relates to a given factor, to a given Indian, and then how it doesn't relate to anything. It's just purely mitzad the etzem fulfillment of the etzem within the etzem itself, without really requiring anything more, because it's gone up through that requiring something into an absolutely unlimited level. And that can occur, as we said, even by a person. He can just go into a level where he's not aware anymore of anything. So how can you say that there's a Tainug HaPashut which is murkav? It still needs something, as it were. Because if you say it's murkav in something, then it's not pashut, because pashut means something absolutely beyond any constituency, no absolute simplicity. Whatever the Rebbe said, that there's a inyan which is going to be revealed, the Yosef, when Moshiach comes, and that's what we call Taimei Torah. The reasons for the Torah, but it's well known that the word tam, when you say yesh tam b'dova, then that means there's a reason for it. But the word tam also means taste. And the word taste, what does that mean? Tainu. The word taste is in Yiddish geschmack. And geschmack doesn't just mean taste. Geschmack means it's very, very difficult to translate it. It means like a fulfillment type taste. You taste in a way that it it elevates you and fulfills you. So in the Torah, there's what we call Tamei Torah, and David doesn't let us know what those inyanim really are nowadays. But he's going to reveal all what you might call the inner reasons for the mitzvahs and for the Torah and for all of the inyanim in such a way that we are going to know the Torah kaviyachol like the Eibishter knows it. And therefore, that's going to cause us an unbelievable tainug, but at such a high level of experience of these inyanim that it's going to pull from that tainug HaPashut, despite the fact that it has a certain cause. Now that's what we give an example of that. It's brought down in the Zohar Kodesh. Brought down, I think it's in Pasha Chayei Sorah. It's brought down that Rabbi Eliezer Hagodel, the Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, he used to teach. He was much younger than him, Rabbi Akiva. He used to teach Rabbi Akiva Seidas HaTorah. He used to teach him how to call it Sod, which is Kabbalah. So it's written that he once asked him he should teach him the Seidas of Shir HaShirim. So it's very amazing. We just spoke about the whole experience of Leos. It's going to be called a shir, like a song. Because a song takes you up out of yourself. Shir HaShirim. In other words, the song of all the songs. Well, that's going to be like the pnimis of Shir HaShirim. It's going to be like the experience of Liyasid. What the Alter Rebbe brings down in the Kutei Torah right at the beginning of Shir HaShirim. He writes a whole berichas about that. So Rabbi Kiva asked Rabbi Eliezer Godel that he should teach him the Seides of Shir HaShirim. So it's written that he did, and when he was learning with him, Rabbi Kiva, he used to have his eyes used to give out tears. In other words, when Rabbi Kiva heard these things, automatically tears just ran down his face. Zolgo Einov Demois. So Chassidus says that there are two types of bechi, two types of crying. One crying is from the fact that you're in so much tsar and you're so much, how do you call it, smallness, that you just can't take it and you weep. And then there's another, that the oinig is just so immense and on such a very high level that the brain can't take it, and therefore the brain just pushes at the eyes and they give out tears. And that's a very different type of inyan. Well, that's a tear which comes dafki from oinig. Amela said that's what the Rebbe says in the previous Maimon. It's also brought down in Barichas and other Maimorim. That's a dogma of the Tainug of a very high level, a very, very high level in Tainug, so high that it pushed Rebbe Kiva's eyes and he just wasn't able to, as it were, take it. But on the other hand, it was learning something in the Torah and giving some form of a time for it. And that's what we call Tamei Torah. In other words, that the hidden and inner biurim in Torah, but derech hapnimiyos, what they call Tamei Torah, and they're going to be revealed liyosid, and that will touch off this Tainuga Choshet, but it'll be touched off by by a certain combining factor, which is the inyan of the Tamei Torah, and then it's going to be revealed the etzem of Tainug. It's got nothing to do this drega of Tainug, where only the aliyah into the etzem, and that's what we say, that the etzem itself has tainug about its own self. And that's what we call shashuim ha-achmim. Now we heard about that in the previous mimer that we learned. And the word shashua in Lashon Kodesh means a shpilat in Yiddish. It means a plaything. Yeah. A shashua means like a Indian of playing. And so when you play, you just play purely for at least the Yid does anyway. You don't play for any reason. Playing is not any Indian by a Yid. Is you just it's like the etzem is experiencing its own self, and it's as it were pleased or playing with its own self. That's called how the etzem experiences tainu from its own self. And it can actually occur in the human realm that you go back into a sort of a pleasure where you're just so full of tainug that you can't care a heck about anything around you. You're just in another world, and just because you are there and what you are, and there's the Eibishter, that is sufficient. There's absolutely no necessity for any other Indian, and you could, as it were, just live like that Adlan Eitach, and the reason that you don't is that because one way or another you fall back into the world. But maybe that's what Rav Mendel meant. I once heard Rav Mendel say, all of a sudden, that he said that sometimes when he was in Russia in those terrible situations, then he used to say, "Dank der Eibishter for der Eibishter." He used to say, "Thanks to Hashem for Hashem." In other words, thanks to Hashem that there's Hashem. That you just experience only because of the Eibishter, just because he's there, just because that's what he is. And that's called the Shashuyim or Achmiyim. That's the Tainug. Kaviola, he's going to give that Tainug down to us, and we're all going to go, except for the Chabadniks. And the Chabadniks are going to say, this is Shashuyim or Achmiyim. We want more, we want Achmas even more than that. They're going to be driving around in tanks. All these other people are going to be these tzaddikim are going to be sitting there and all experiencing tiny a person, and the Chabadniks are going to say, "Don't be satisfied, guys. We want more." So that's what. So I see my slight sarcasm doesn't get properly accepted. So he said, the begin Zayner HaPoshet, She'ena Bo B'Murakav B'Shum Dova. Gam Loi B'Riyada, Chochma. Now when he says with the Gam Loi B'Riyada Chochma, we'll have to deal in another class with that, because we're going to come something similar to another few lines ahead. And what is Riyah de Chochma? There's such a high madrega in the Koyach HaChochma where you experience an idea and you become acquainted so deeply with a certain Indian that it's like as if you see it. As far as you're concerned, you saw it. And that's called Riyah de Chochma. And that's not really seeing with the eyes, but the profundity, the effect on the person is as if he had seen it with his eyes. Yeah. And that's an amazing thing called Riyah de Chochma. For the emes of Chachamim are called in the Gemara Einei Ha'eda. The Alter brings in Tanya Perek Beis that the emes of Indian of a Chacham, he's like the eyes of the people. You know, he sees, because everything by him is so profoundly clear and understood that it's like he sees it, you know, in a different way. That's why you have to listen to the Rebbe, because the Rebbe didn't understand things; he saw them. They come over and push it. So the Rebbe said to the Rebbe, the union of the Tainug HaPoshet, which is going to be, is even higher than that. I mean, that's a tremendous experience, Riyah de Chochma, but the Tainug HaPoshet is even higher than that. Ela, Sheba Einug HaPoshet, Gufa Yesh Beis Madrega. Now, this is very common in Chassidus Chabad. You get up to a tremendously high union, and I think you've made it. No, but in that Gufa, there are two Madregas. There's two levels in that itself. Very common in Chassidus. So there is in that Gufa, there are two Madregas. And what are the two Madregas? Oinaga Poshut Abba Bamulkash. It's a Oinaga Poshut, but it comes in here. The Rebbe doesn't say the word Mulka, but he says Mulgash. Mulgash means you can feel why you're having the Oinag. There's still something there which is coming into feeling, that feeling causes things, or reacts to things. And therefore there's almost like a certain causatory factor, even though the ultimate uftu, as they say in Yiddish, is the Tainug HaPoshet. And what is that? B'taimei Torah. But that's what we said, the type of thing Rabbi Akiva was learning with Rabbi Eliezer ben Urkenes, that the singing of Shir HaShirim, and these taimim, pnimium, in pnimis HaTorah, Roz, it's called in the Zohar Kodesh, Rozin, the secrets of the secret. And when Rabbi Akiva heard that, he just couldn't take it. You know, he wasn't. He just sort of had it caught. He crumbled to a certain extent under the tremendous gilui of this oineg that he felt. And that's what Chassidus stresses, that weeping of Rabbi Akiva wasn't weeping, it was weeping because of oineg. Weeping because of oineg. And then there's another thing. He said, "B'china shashuim ha'achmiyim mamish." Then there's another level of the actual playing within the soul. Mamish she'ena ba b'mugish klal afilu tam b'tam yoter. Even in those things that Rabbi Eliezer taught Rabbi Akiva, there's even higher than that. And they don't need anything. It's just you and the Eibishter. You know, like the Zohar Kodesh says, Yidden and the Eibishter alone, and that's all. Nothing else. And the Eibishter is through with that, and the Yidden are through with it. So what is not good? Lama lo tov. Why can't we have it right away? Everybody who says that this whole crazy business, it's called Olam Hazeh, you know, it's worth a toppenny. You know, let's get into the Olam the way it's really meant to be. The Olam Ha'amiti, the Shashuim Ha'achmiyim. People say, well, what's going to be with my, what's going to be with my life? You know, to have a family. I mean, if you can have in such a crazy situation called Olam Hazeh, you can still have a little something, you know, and what's supposed to be. Just imagine, Kamu and the big Gila Lakus in this Madrega Lamata, you won't have what you need. Everybody have what he needs in the highest possible way that could be possibly imagined. You know, what are we waiting for? I must admit, I haven't got the faintest idea. So it's very common by Sidney, before you finish off, you learn another little piece, and then we finish. She says, Biur Inyan. What is the Biur of this whole Inyan? The Hine, Lafia, and his Bu'al Yil, that was explained up till now. Tzodik loima, the B'chinas HaTainug HaAtzmi she'ena bo b'murgash, hu l'mayla b'madrega mib'chinas Tainug HaAtzmi she'bo b'murgash. We still made two. We said there were two levels. Yeah, there was one. Yeah, there was Tainug HaAtzmi which came into feeling, and there's Tainug HaAtzmi which is completely higher than feeling. Well, l'chayra eino muvan. Ma shayach l'chalik madregas b'chinas Tainug HaAtzmi me'achas she'shneim heim b'chinas etzem. That's a very amazing question. And the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. How can you say you've gone up into Tainug, which is purely in the etzem and mitzad the etzem? Then you say, oh no, wait a minute, but really in that there are two levels. That somehow we are the etzem still connected with a feeling which has got to do with a feeding power called tam. What will be tam also means einik. But why should the etzem need something else, as it were, to fulfill it? So therefore the Rebbe said that since you're talking anyway about tainug, which has got to do with the etzem, both Lamaila and by the Adam in etzem nafshay, what's the point of making two levels? Why is that? No, this is real tainug, a portion. This is tainug, a portion, but why do that? The etzem never divides itself. So if you got into the etzem, you can't split the very essence of anything into two dargas. How much more so? The essence of Elikus and the neshama is anyway Elikus. So you can't divide and split them into details. So that is the question. How can we have these two levels in the Tainug HaPashut? So you see what sort of things used to bother people in the Bavit. You see, this is what the bothered people in the Bavit. How can you have in Tainug HaAtzmi two mother? Here they were sitting in a little old muddy village or somewhere in crazy old Russia with all the tzodas and all the messing around, all the Inyanim, and they're going to do it. What bothers them? How can there be two madregas in Tainug HaPashut? I mean, that's a tremendous limud. So why do we spend so much of our time messing around, with all these little stickelach and with all the masalach? Get involved.